Hey, it's Tess, content creator, model, presenter, and host of the Tess Talks podcast, on a mission to ignite curiosity. Okay, who doesn't want life transformative sex, bedroom marathons, and full body orgasms? I'm so excited to share today's episode with you guys. It's gonna be a juicy one. Joining us is the iconic Kim Anami, a world-renowned sexologist and founder of transformational courses like the Well Fucked Woman, Vaginal Kung Fu, and the Coming Together Salon for Couples. With decades of experience in energized Taoism and energetic healing, Kim shares how sexual energy is your ultimate life force, one that can unlock deeper love, creativity, healing, and even financial flow. So today we talk about things like gourmet sex versus junk food sex, the orgasm as a portal to transformation, and why sex should leave you energized, not exhausted. You'd be surprised that even sexual blockages could be tied to your bank account. This episode is your permission to break free from taboos and step into your full erotic power. This May is the Coming Together for Couples course, which is all about helping couples experience lifelong passionate sex. I've popped a special link just for my Tess Talks listeners in the show notes below. I know this one is going to be amazing. So if you're ready to reclaim your sexual power, then click the link below and enjoy the episode. Let's get curious. Well, honestly, thank you so much for jumping on with me today. I know my listeners are absolutely going to love hearing from you. This podcast is really all about igniting curiosity, and I feel like there's no better topic than sex to ignite curiosity and get people excited. So I know it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, always happy to talk about it. Thanks for having me.
Yay. So you describe yourself as a holistic sex and relationship coach. So I'm curious to know, like, how did you first find yourself pursuing a career around sex and sexual empowerment and relationship coaching?
Yeah, well, I often say that if I went to sex therapist school, I would be broke and unsuccessful. And so my path was really following my own interest and desire for self healing. So from a young age, in my mid-teens, I began experimenting with all kinds of different things, studying everything from meditation, transpersonal psychology. I got into different alternative methods of healing, herbs, homeopathy. And then
Wow.
I had definitely sexual curiosity. And then my early sexual experiences were really powerful, I was studying psychology at the time. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the idea of self-actualization was really interesting to me. And that's how I would feel after these deep sexual encounters, even early on, is that I was self-actualized, that these false pieces of myself, the kinds of things that get projected and superimposed upon us, our walls, they would just fall away from me. And I would emerge out of these encounters feeling more like my real self. So over the years of trying all these different modalities in the pursuit of self-realization, of higher states of awareness, which I believe we can all attain naturally, sex really became the standout as the most powerful quantum leap, fastest mechanism to bring me to this transcendent state of being more myself. And even through the deeper vaginal orgasms, especially cervical orgasms, feeling like I was releasing trauma, even age-old trauma that was embedded in my tissues and myself. And so over the years, it was a very organic process of me studying these different teachings and healing processes, and then amalgamating them all into what I do now is a holistic sex and relationship coach, where that really is at the forefront of what I do. But the core essence of what I do is around self-responsibility and the idea that everyone has a high libido, every woman is multi-orgasmic, every woman can shoot ping pong balls with her vagina, because it's more normal to have a ping pong ball shooting vagina than it is to have vaginas that fall out or that pee their pants all the time. That's
Mm.
become normalized, but it's not normal. That's not what is supposed to happen. Vaginas really are meant to be furniture carrying, ping pong ball shooting, bottle opening. That's a little exaggerated, but do what you like. Creatures that empower us rather than these dissociated, lifeless experiences that most women have of feeling very numb and disconnected. So
Mm.
all of that combined to create, I've created the genre of holistic sex coaching that didn't exist before. You either had these white coated doctors who were very, had to put their lab coat on and their stethoscope to do an interview, right? It's like, really? You just need to signify your authority, apparently. Or this giggly Cosmo kind of, ooh, I touched his willy, like very juvenile, tacky kind of sexuality, right? There was never this
Mm.
middle ground that I forged where sex can be sexy and also this holistic approach to healing and even a spiritual approach, which I didn't create. Like the Taoists and the tantric studies, like, they were in tune with that notion of the spirit of sex. But putting that all together was what I did to create this idea that everyone can. Sex is healing, enlightening, rejuvenating, and self realizing. And if you're not feeling that every time you have it, you're doing it wrong.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm just obsessed with everything you just said. But it's so interesting because you're talking about your background. I can really see everything that you've studied and started and how you got into it really coming through all your work these days. Like it's so clear of how that holistic approach has touched on everything that you promote and talk about. And I also really love that through your work, I feel like you're really empowering people. And I'm really passionate about giving us our power back. And I know that that's really strong messaging through what you promote and what you educate. And I see that coming through all your courses. And I just think that that's a really unique and profound aspect.
Thank you. I appreciate that you see that because I do feel that, at the time, my life was doing the next right thing. Like when I set out on my path in my 20s traveling and studying these different things, I really had no idea I would end up as a sex and relationship coach. I was just
Mm.
following the next right cue of what to do and where to go and what to focus on. And it all, as I said, amalgamated into what I do now. But it ended up being the very best self education I could have ever had because
Mm.
everything that I did, I moved to London and I studied method acting for a year in my early 20s, right? And even that, the idea of digging deep down in yourself to find, you don't, like in method acting, you go into yourself to find the truth of an emotion and then amplify that to share that in your character rather than putting on fake, oh, this is what it looks like to be angry. You scrunch your eyebrows and you pound your fists and you yell really loud. In method acting, you just go in to find something, some kernel of anger, and then express that. So
Mm.
that really is, in a way, like that's a really good parallel to the essence of my work. I'm not having people put on fake things to fake it through a problem or band-aid a problem, right? I want to
Mm.
get to the absolute solution and purity of that, knowing that that exists, and we just have to find it. And there's wisdom in that, and there's enlightenment in that. And that's the opposite to the medical paradigm, which is your body is dumb. We should shut it up and suppress it and ignore it and drug it rather
Mm.
than actually there is so much wisdom and intelligence and connection to the divine via our bodies that we need
Mm.
to open up to that and remove any blockages or disconnect that's been instilled in us to find that channel where we really are connected to divine energy. And one of the
Mm.
most powerful ways to do that is through sex, right? That is the very
Mm.
life force energy itself coming through us to make new life. And so it's a shortcut. And the sad message out there, like that obscures the truth of sexuality, all the shame and the taboo and the manufactured misinformation is layered on top of this truth that the sexual current really is our connection to divine life force and energy.
Mm.
And if we looked at that as a fuel source for our lives, as a creative power for our lives, our
Mm.
views and experiences of sex would be so different rather than most people carrying around such large weights of shame and trauma connected to their sexuality, when the irony is that this superpower is literally at their fingertips. And for most people, it could be a million miles away based on how much they're actually connecting to it.
Mm. I'm so glad you brought all of that up because I was going to ask you about sexual energy and how much of that correlates to different aspects of our lives. You know, everything from creativity to feeling confident in ourselves to how we perform at work. Like, I think sexual energy is so overlooked in our society as just being about sex. But as you're saying, it's so much more, and it's about our healing and it's about who we are as a person. And I'd love you to elaborate on how sexual energy can really influence our whole life.
Yeah, like this is something that I've seen beautifully over the years doing this work myself and then working now with thousands and thousands of people, where when our sex life gets elevated, everything else in our life gets elevated. And when our
Mm.
sex life is stagnant, it sucks everything else into it like a vortex. So people will have, like, okay, there'd be a couple who would come to see me and they were having trouble in their, one couple in particular, troubles in their business. They were self-employed, they ran their own business, always in financial doldrums. Occasionally they'd get a windfall, but almost struggling hand to mouth all the time. Children acting out. She was feeling really stuck, not very orgasmic. So we sat down, dealt with all these things. And then every time we would clear a block in their relationship, there would be this corresponding reverberation in their outer life. Like he would get a new job offer. Their kids would start like acting differently. Giant financial windfall would come in. And it was like clockwork. Every single time we had a big breakthrough in the relationship, there was a corresponding outer event that led to more harmony. So now over, decades of doing this, I can say with the utmost confidence that nothing, your relationship, your sexual energy is your superpower, the glue, the nucleus of your family. And
Mm.
when you put the energy into that connection, that's when you will see all of these waves spread out into every area of your life, from your children, your work, your finances, your creativity, and even your body. Like people just drop weight, they drop excess baggage because they've alchemized it off through having this magnificent high level sex. And then
Mm.
again, the opposite happens when people are really stuck in the bedroom. They're having all kinds of issues in their outer lives, right? And they never will make that connection because society doesn't make that connection, right? They
Mm.
never do. And that's why on my podcast, I have this feature segment called Well Fucked All Stars, where we interview people who've done my work and they've had these really amazing and hilarious, often stories about the
Mm.
impact it's had. But more than anything, I have them on to demonstrate that connection, that yes, their sex life got better. She's having more orgasms. They're both happier. He gets more blowjobs, all is well, right? But it's so much more than that, because then we talk about all the other things that happened in their lives because they got more solid together.
Mm. It's actually a very good podcast for anyone listening. Definitely go and listen because there's some very juicy and inspiring conversations on there. So, what would you say are some of the most common stories then that you see with people and couples that you work with?
I mean, there's a variety of people who come in, right? There's people who could be totally estranged and on their last legs of do or die, right? And one of the couple has usually given the other an ultimatum: we need to get things together or we're done, like check out this Kim Anami woman. And then they'll do a salon together and these shifts will happen. And then we have people come in who already have a great sex life. They're like, or they, let's say they think they do, but perhaps compared to what's really available in Anami land, it's okay. It's
Mhm.
just okay, right? So a couple's having fairly frequent sex 2 or 3 times a week. She's having clitoral orgasms. He's coming, maybe their sex, like their intercourse lasts 10, 15 minutes. And then I'm saying to them, well, actually, like, you ought to be lasting a minimum an hour. She can have 10 orgasms in a sitting. She ought to be squirting across the room and having cervical orgasms, being multi-orgasmic. Men can learn how to separate orgasm from ejaculation, and your your sex life can get you rich and you can lose an extra 20 to 50 pounds in the process. And
Oh my
they're
God,
like,
but doesn't that sound good?
right.
Who doesn't want that?
Right. And then I reinforce this idea of what I call the Anami guarantee, that everyone can. These aren't just some special skills and experiences that are reserved for lucky people, or that's just the way you were built. No, I guarantee that every single person can have these experiences. And it's just a matter of figuring out where you got stuck along the way. And my work
Mm,
is about removing those blockages and then giving people the skills that they need to make it to these high level places, right? So
mm,
I want people to have these, to be worthy of all-star status, right? Where they have these mind-blowing, body-blowing experiences and everybody looks at them like the happiest couple in the room, right? They're the most like
mm.
gloriously ecstatic couple that we know.
And you always pick up on that energy, don't you? It's like that inner energy that glows and comes through from within that, yeah, you're right. As soon as you walk into a room, people notice that.
It's tangible. And that really
Mm,
is the effect of this life force energy being
mm,
worn by people, right? They become so, they're inhabiting that energy so strongly that they wear it and they radiate it. And we have all
mm,
these amazing stories of people, like let's say a single woman, right, begins to rev up her sexual energy. She's having a self pleasure practice. There's a technique I teach called meditate, masturbate, create, which is all about how to get things going as a single person, but even as a couple, and how to learn to use that sexual energy for creative processes, like I said. And, they'll be starting to do this. They go into town wearing sweatshirts, hair up in a ponytail, flip flop, just not put on at all. And they'll get men literally running across the street to ask them out. And they're like, whoa, I am not looking even remotely glamorous, but these guys are picking up on this aura, this energy that's so
mm,
palpable. They can see and feel it from, 20 meters away, right? That
mm,
they're galloping across the street and insisting that they must get to know this woman. And we hear that all the time. And, women to men as well. So we know it's the quality of being well fucked. And in
mm.
Anami land, being well fucked isn't just having lots of sex, but it's learning how to really fully inhabit this energy and then channel it out into the world so that you're using it as a creative power source in your life.
Mm. I really want to go into that and how sex is so much more than just penetration, and definitely want to go into some tangible suggestions for listeners that they can take home today. But I'd love to kind of start with gourmet sex versus junk food sex because you talk about that a lot. Can you elaborate by what you mean about that?
So, just like we look at junk food and gourmet food, junk food could be something we usually think of it as sugary or maybe like, I don't know, greasy food where you get a quick hit. It feels good in the moment, and then you could get a sugar high, and then very quickly you'll get a plummet. You might pass out and fall asleep. And the long term effect, or even medium or short term effect, is that your body chemistry gets all out of whack and you're not really nourishing your body at all. You are actually taking away from it, right? You could be
Mm,
damaging your body. And no judgment here, right? This is just more an observation. Whereas with a gourmet meal, it's something where you have all of this thought and creativity, multidimensional planning and awareness of spices, tastes, colors, smells, presentation, coming up with unique ways of pairing and cooking something. And the you get a memory then of that experience that lasts, and those nutrients are building your body over the long term. So the same equivalent applies in sex, is that you can have junk food sex that might feel good in the moment, or more so is probably used as stress relief or a way of putting someone to sleep, like both like physically and
yeah.
energetically, symbolically. And the long term or even short term could be like a sense of remorse or hangover or regret, right? Feeling like you're not quite right in yourself. And people can be having junk food sex in long term marriages. This isn't just the domain
Mm,
of casual encounters. People in long term relationships can just be having quick hit. We can check that off the box, right? We're kind of using each other, or one person's accommodating the other.
mm,
So, whereas in a gourmet sex connection, it's multi-dimensional in that it's physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. On every level, you're open to your partner and you want to
Mm.
absorb all of their energy. You've worked at releasing any kind of barriers and walls that might have been between you that would obscure the connection. When you're in that full open heart, open vagina, open cock, you have so much more depth and you exchange on such a deeper level that you nourish each other. There is no
Mm.
greater nourishment than a gourmet sex, surrendered, open heart, open genital connection. And that
Mm.
is what then fuels your life and builds your body, your psyche. Like I noticed early on after having really profound sexual encounters, it would sculpt my body. And it wasn't from
Mm.
the particular exercise. Oh, I was really, working my abs that day. It was from the nourishment. It was from the adoration, the power, the depth of that connection that I had with that partner, that it was so nourishing to me that I walked out and my body changed. Like this is that holographic reality, right? Where you're
Mm.
adored and self adored, feeling so at home in your own body that you occupy it in a different way.
Mm.
So that's the power of gourmet sex. And that's the kind of sex where you have all of these, as I said, these reverberations in your outer life where it touches every single thing that you do. You develop the Midas touch where it
Mm.
feels like effortlessly things just go your way. There's a flow to everything you do. You magnetize beautiful, positive, helpful people because that's the energy that you're putting out when you've been well fucked, when you're engaging in gourmet, high level sex.
I'm excited to bring to you today's episode sponsor, Fluff, which is the brand behind my go-to 5-minute face. You've probably seen their cloud compacts floating around online. You've definitely seen me using them. They're super aesthetic, weighted metal cases that kind of feel like I'm holding a grounding stone in my hand. I love that they're refillable, they're designed with intention, and they're honestly just so beautiful to use. My personal favorites are their bronzing powder in shade 1 Golden. It gives like a really subtle warmth without looking like you're wearing makeup. The lip oil in shade 2 Original Tint is like the perfect tint, kind of like your own lips, but better. And their cream blush in shade 2, well, that one, don't even get me started. It's like a super creamy, dreamy, soft pink. All their products are natural based, minimal, and made so you can get ready in 5 minutes or less, which is such a win for me these days. No fluff, literally. You can shop Fluff exclusively online at itsallfluff.com. Make sure you check them out because I know you're going to love them as much as I do. That's itsallfluff.com. All right, back to the episode. It's funny, isn't it? Because you're so right. Like everything around us doesn't promote that. Like we even just have to look at movies and everything is that junk food sex. In and out, done, bam, wham, thank you, ma'am. And that's kind of everything that we're kind of like raised up around. And then we have porn. And that's kind of the only two places where we ever really see sex happening. And they're not really the best depiction of it, are they?
Well, I think it's deliberate, right? You have to think
Mm.
about that because my work gets censored and I'm talking about
Mm.
elevated spiritual high level sex. Whereas like titty girls and porn and cheesy, really tacky, like even on Instagram these days, I've noticed that there's like heavy duty, like it's supposed to be so non pornographic, but there's so much
Mm.
more that's crept into there these days.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I mean literal porn, not just like a sexy girl, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's, to me, that's very deliberate because
Mm.
when you intentionally remove that connection and distract people and take them on these detours, because these kinds of more superficial, casual, disrespectful versions of sex are detours, because if you're
Mm.
having that kind of sex, you'll never capitalize on the power that I'm talking about. Right? The
Mm.
kind of sex that I'm talking about is when we have this deep emotional and physical connection with someone. And I want to be clear, like, this isn't a judgment. I'm not like judging people who have different kinds of sex. It's more of an assessment of what happens to your energy. If we're really
Mm.
truthful, right? Like, which of these is building you up as a person, as a character, versus pulling you down or distracting
Mm.
you.
So, for someone listening who's like, okay, I want all of this, what are your 3 first and best tips for someone to harness their sexual energy and have a better sex life?
So I mentioned this concept of meditate, masturbate, create earlier. And if we're talking about a couple, it could be meditate, make love, create. So
Mm.
first of all, the meditate, I mean, I literally mean meditate, but I suppose on a broader sense, you could also say have the intention to have this kind of sex, right? To have, to go on a study, a quest of how can I have this deeper, higher level, life-changing sex. And then on a literal sense, I would actually have a, if it's a single person, they could have a meditation practice on their own. If it's a couple, they could do it together. And I use a practice called, I use a mantra when I meditate. So I chant, and the word that
Mhm.
I use is called Hu, Hu. It's an ancient name for God, spirit, energy, the universe. And you chant it, it sounds like this. And this is a very high vibration word. It's in the studies and the writings of Rumi. He talks about it as the
Mm.
word of God. They found it in cultures and different tribes all over the world, from Africa to the Celts, as a very high vibration word to elevate, heal, and protect. So even chanting that for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to ground yourself, get you in your body, and raise your state of consciousness. And then the masturbate or make love, if it's a couple, they go into their lovemaking practice. If it's a single person, that they're self-pleasuring and practicing breathing, right? So most people,
Mm.
when they are either masturbating or making love, they tend to hold their breath, breathe really shallow, tighten the body. And especially in men people, you can see it like like this very, yeah, see, everybody
Yes.
laughs. Why does everyone laugh? Because everybody has seen that
Everyone's
face.
seen it.
Everybody's experienced that in their male partners. And they're just ejecting out all of this high quality, potent energy. So if they were to change that pattern and then learn to relax their body, breathe all of that energy throughout their system and recirculate, that's how you harvest that
Mm.
energy. And then afterward, you can create, meaning go do something creative. That could be a typical creative pursuit like writing, drawing, painting. It could be gardening, playing with your children, painting the house, going to the gym, cooking a meal. You just are intending that when you are finished that encounter and you've been breathing and recirculating and harvesting all of that high quality energy, now you're going to go infuse it into activities. So I've
Mm.
got a podcast on that in my Orgasmic Enlightenment podcast. It's actually called Meditate, Masturbate, Create. So you can have a
Amazing.
fuller breakdown of that whole process. But that's it in a nutshell, is that
Mm.
conscious intention, breathing, and then thinking about channeling that energy out into the world by going to do
Mm.
something. And if you're doing it right, meaning you finished your sexual encounter, you're going to feel energized instead of tired. If you
Mm.
feel tired, then you didn't do it right, meaning you weren't breathing, you were holding the breath, you were tightening up the body. And even guys who typically pass out after sex, when they do this, they do, right? Again, you're laughing because
Mm.
it's true. They will want to go to the gym. They will want to run a marathon. And we had a
Mm.
guy who's actually an ultra marathon runner in the US. And he heard me say that. He's like, oh, I'd like to run a marathon before sex and after sex. And he literally does, right? Like
Oh my, that's amazing.
so we interviewed him because he's got an amazing story to tell. It's an episode called Marathon Man, Marathon Cock. And so he did these practices,
So
and by
good.
doing them, he said he ran the best timed race he'd ever run.
Mm,
Right?
wow.
So that,
Which is so interesting
yeah.
because, there's all that messaging at the moment around men who are withholding ejaculation and coming, and even those challenges where you don't ejaculate for like 30 days and how that's supposed to, I don't know, enhance your energy or creativity. What's your perspective on that then?
I agree. I actually do agree. So I didn't know how far you wanted to go into this, but men needlessly spreading their seed just drains them. And
Mm,
it helps if you're doing these practices of breathing and recirculating energy. But most men, if they commit to the practice and they compare, okay, how did I feel for the 2 weeks where I didn't ejaculate? But you have to do these practices I talk about, the breathing and the
mm,
recirculation, or you'll just feel that quote unquote blue balls, right? Where
mm,
you're not actually, all you're doing is holding something back. And that's not good
mm,
for the body. Where in my technique, you're actually directing that energy into something else,
Mm.
which is your life, right? So, I mean, I guarantee that pretty much any man who tried that and actually did my practices would feel the difference.
Mm.
They would feel more focus, awareness, more physical power, mental power, emotional balance by practicing that. So
Mm.
it is an ideal recommended practice. It's a hard sell. I mean, I have podcasts on it called, How to Orgasm Without Ejaculation, because
Mm.
every man can learn to do that. And then you have the best of both worlds. You can still have an orgasm. You just don't take out the seed, because the
Mm.
logic there is that, with every single ejaculation, you can build a new life. And so if men are ejecting this, the body goes around and it creates the most high level potent mixture to make a new life with. And if it has to do that every single day, right? It's high,
Mm.
like this high grade material, it's stealing that from you eventually as a man.
Mm.
Right. And so better to keep the fluid, have the experiences. You can even have the orgasm, but why dump out? And like they've been writing about this for over 2,000 years in the time of
Wow.
Galen and Hippocrates. Over the years, people, I think at times had interpreted it as a don't masturbate, it's sinful. But it wasn't really. If you look, and I have deeper into these writings, people are saying that there's a toll, an energetic toll, a health toll, a mental toll
Mm.
on this relentless, spraying of seed, right? Rather than
Mhm.
being judicious with it and conscious about it.
Mm. Okay, so let's talk orgasms then. If we start with men or carry on with men, what are the different types of orgasms that they can have?
Well, for men, I would say like there's the more terminal orgasm of just, busting one out, right? The probably what most men have. Men can have full body orgasms when they learn to do these breathing techniques, and they can spread the
Mm.
energy throughout the whole body. They can have multiple orgasms. They can learn to orgasm without ejaculation. They can have G-spot orgasms. Their G-spot is the prostate gland. They can have energy orgasms. And then if you get really adept, you can have different orgasms from touching different parts of your body. Like you could
Mm.
have be stimulated at your elbow and end up having an orgasm. But that's more high
Wow.
level, really deep self-awareness and skill in these
Mm.
practices.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So, what would be some of your first suggestions for a man to get a little more connected with his self and orgasmic self?
Breathe, motherfucker, to quote
Yeah.
Wim Hof. So the most
Love him.
important, yes, sexual skill that men can cultivate is stamina. Number
Mm.
one. If you are a pump, dump, schlump, kind of two pump chump, your woman is never going to be sexually satisfied and she will resent you. She might not understand why she hates your motherfucking guts, but if you pump and dump and just fall over repeatedly, she's just going to be like, oh my God, I just have another root canal. I'm so busy. I can't have sex tonight. Oh my God, I'd rather clean the kitty litter. It really needs cleaning. Nobody wants to be a cum receptacle because you're just
Mm.
tired and need to bust a nut. Like, so stamina is number one, and that's learning these practices I just spoke about, is incorporating the
Mm.
breathing. Every single man ought to be able to go 1 hour minimum, no stress, no drama, an hour minimum without even being, on the edge. And then after that, you can build, right? I recommend that couples have weekly 3 hour sex dates, but,
Mm.
you know, an hour of intercourse. And I mean intercourse, not just all sex things combined, but intercourse,
Mm.
1 hour minimum. And women need that.
Mm, I love that you brought in or you bring in meditation through that, because I think a lot of people listening will be like 1 hour, like how is that possible? But I think when you're like fully in like that present moment, 1 hour is like kind of fly by. And that's why I think you talk about these sexual marathons that can go 3, 4, 5 hours, which I think for a lot of us listening, be like, oh my God, like how is that possible? So
And
a
that
lot of it is that presence.
Absolutely. And that connection with yourself and with your partner. And even our all stars often had that same thought at the beginning. What are we going to do for 3 hours or like an hour,
Mm.
even? Right. They're like, we're done in 20 minutes normally. So, but then now, whatever months into it, they'll be having literal all night sessions where they don't sleep and they go to work in the morning and they feel energized because they just
Mm.
cultivated and harnessed all of this high quality energy that it's now replaced their sleep as an energy source. And I'm not
Mm.
saying that that's the goal, is to never sleep and have sex all night.
Sex all night long.
Like a breatharian, but a sexarian. Um, no, but it's to say that when people think, oh, we're going to be so tired if we stay up all night. No, it's the opposite. If you're having
Mm.
this kind of sex, you will feel revitalized and you'll need less sleep, and
Mm.
like the people who are like, oh, we're so busy, we don't have the time. No, prioritize your sex life, because time will begin to become elastic. You will be
Mm.
more effective in your day-to-day life because you prioritize having sex, nourishing yourself in that sanctuary of your bed, recharging through each other. And then you go
Mm.
out and you slay. You
Mm.
motherfucking slay, because nothing can stop you. You become
Mm.
unflappable, right? You've
Mm.
got this superpower that you're now imbued with, and nothing can touch you. So
Mm.
your day actually goes more smooth. You're more effective, you're smarter, you're more creative. People just like they'll pave the way for you, right? And that happens because you can consider it a sexual meditation, right? When you're
Mm.
having this kind of high level sex, it's a form of meditation because you're reaching higher states of consciousness. That's
Mm.
what ultimately happens.
And this is why your courses are so good, because they're week by week exercises. And so I think that really helps for people to actually tangibly get that into their calendar and into their schedule and actually start creating habits and making changes. Whereas I think just listening, it can be a bit overwhelming. Like, oh, how am I going to find that time? Or how are we going to improve our sex lives overnight?
Yeah, absolutely. In my salons, these are my online courses. I go through
Mm.
that. Yeah, it's a weekly set of videos that people watch, and then home play exercises for them to do and to connect with. And then I have a live
Mm.
Q&A call.
Okay, so what about orgasms for all the ladies listening? So, what are the different types of female orgasms?
Clitoral orgasm, which is the most common out there. Most women have clitoral orgasms, and a lot of women think that that's all there is. When I start naming all these other ones, they might have heard of them, but they're often, let's say,
Mm.
with the G spot, accompanied by this idea that, oh, like some women can and some women can't. And that's a lie. All women can. 100%, I guarantee that. Right? So, clitoral, G spot, cervical, deep vaginal orgasm in the cervix, anal orgasm, nipplegasm, same as men, the energy orgasm, full body orgasm, multiple orgasm. Have I missed any? Like throatgasm, you can have an orgasm from deep throating. And
Oh
then
my God, that's one I haven't heard.
yes, and then the same with men, like the kind of like an eargasm or an elbowgasm, where you become so sensitized and you've opened up all these neural pathways that eventually you don't even have to have that direct contact. You can just open up to these experiences within yourself and access them immediately.
Mm. So I assume it's exactly the same, but for a woman to enhance her orgasmic experience, connecting to the breath, meditation, what would be some of your top suggestions?
Those absolutely. And then examining the place, like if people have trauma, right? If they have sustained sexual trauma, that needs healing. And that can
Mm.
actually be done, ironically, paradoxically, through sex. A lot of people work
Mm.
through their own sexual issues through the slow, gentle moving into new sexual experiences. If it's a couple, radical openness and communication, right? So
Mm.
we live in a world, where there's so much gaslighting. The ideas of white lies are valued more than true honesty. And I would say
Mm.
that that kills relationships faster than anything else. And
Mm.
so if you really want to have this level of gourmet sex in a couple, you have to be committed to true, honest, open, deep communication, and regularly.
Mm.
Like that's the lube.
Mm.
That's the real lube that you need, is that level of openness with each other, where
Mm.
even it's kind of like the princess and the pea, right? Where we all are the princess in that way, in that there's even slight holding back or sins of omission and outright lies can create big disturbances that we might not know what they are exactly, but we can feel them, right? In the
Mm.
field between us. And so when they exist, we just start to contract back. We pull back, we feel a bit of defensiveness. We're not as trusting because we know something's amiss. We don't know what,
Mm.
but we know it is, right? And so I call it the lie of a lie, where people tell them, oh, my partner will never find that out. Or, it's not worth mentioning. That might hurt their feelings. I mean, like, you don't have to tell your partner everything, right? I went to the grocery store and bananas were on sale, but I didn't buy the bananas. I got the tomato. Like, fuck. But the stuff that's really pertinent to your relationship, yes, that
Mm.
is essential to toss into the alchemical fire and have a commitment with it. This also involves, like, let's say a couple has had a tacit agreement to don't ask, don't tell, right? Their whole relationship, and many are, based on
Mm.
that. If they want to have this kind of elevated gourmet sex connection that I'm talking about, then the parameters need to change, right? It's a
Mm.
discussion of, okay, would we like this? Because here's what we're going to need to do to go forward. And
Mm.
that's what I guide people through step by step in all of my programs. But that's a
Mm.
really big factor, is we're going to change the nature of this by committing to having radical openness and honesty, right? And that
Mm.
the fabric of our relationship depends on that. And anything
Yeah.
less than that will erode the relationship.
It's so interesting because I'm so passionate about how the body holds energy itself and how it stores different energy. So even on like being open and honest with ourselves about what we have experienced, because as you say, like sexual energy, that's going to flow through all of us. But if there is that trauma held in different areas of our body, that sexual energy is not going to be able to flow through and we're not going to get that full experience.
Exactly. And that's where it shocks me sometimes. Like, here's an example. Years ago, I was working with a woman. I don't do one on one coaching anymore, but I did, many years ago. The woman
Mm.
came to see me and she had, the doctors diagnosed her as having vagina on lockdown, right? That she had, her vagina was hard to penetrate and painful. And she was literally in an arranged marriage. Like, she was Indian background and she
Mm.
had been married for 12 years. And by whatever grace of God, she left her marriage. She decided that she wanted something more, and she did, right? Which
Mm.
was a huge courageous act. And so she goes to a doctor, right? Like, before that, and they're like, well, you've got this syndrome, whatever. I call them like vulvo bullshitia, like this big cascade,
Love it.
of like made up things that they don't know what they are and they don't know how to heal, right? And
Go
just
and
make
white
up
label it
some.
something.
What's that?
They go and label it something
Yeah, so they give it a
ridiculous.
name,
Yeah.
but it's like it doesn't even matter because they can't
Mm.
fix it, right? And so people carry around these names with them that I have to sometimes look up because I'm like, oh, what name did they make up now, right? Because I don't even participate in the allopathic system of whatever sex.
Mm.
So anyway, she has this label, and they don't ask her anything about her history. And she not only was in this arranged marriage, but she'd had sexual trauma in her past, right? So then she meets a guy. She's newly, divorced. She's dating this guy, and she has incredible sex, best sex, no pain, no lockdown, no vulvo bullshitia condition, right? And it's so obvious that well, A, she didn't want to be having sex with this man, so her vagina doesn't want to have sex. Like, it's not rocket science, right? She's being
Mm.
forced into this marriage, forced to have sex with someone. Her vagina is like, nope, and it closes down.
Mm.
Logic, beauty,
Mm.
actually, right? Beautiful. She can't say no, but her vagina is saying no for her.
Speaking
Beautiful.
for her, yeah.
And so then she goes and meets someone her vagina actually wants to have sex with. Vagina opens right up. Gates of heaven.
Mm.
Welcome. Come on in. We are happy to have you, right? Blissful sex life. So we also did some work on her past history, but that was even just the fact that she was now with someone who she wanted to be with, night and day
Mm.
with her vagina. And
It's
so
so fascinating how the body responds because I've even heard stories around how women with certain partners, again, will either have pain or they'll have things like reoccurring thrush or like discharge or like crazy weird like physical symptoms. But as soon as they leave that partner, like none of it
yeah,
happens again.
yeah, exactly. It's like the
Mm.
body says no when the person can't say no.
Mm.
And so if we look at it that way, right? And this is where I differ so much from the allopathic system, is like the allopathic system would just be like, take this Canesten cream, or, right?
Mm.
Or here's this thing to pry your vagina open with, right? It's like the stuff
Mm.
of imbeciles trying to, and
Mm.
you're like, are you fucking serious? This is the best you can do?
Mhm.
Rather than, okay, let's look at what's going on here and a deeper solution to the problem, which isn't even that hard a solution to come up with, right? But if
Mm,
we honor that the body is giving us messages and we listen to them rather than trying to squelch it and ignore it, which overriding the body creates more problems, right? So let's
mm,
say a woman is with a guy and she always needs lube to be with this guy. Okay, well, is that a message that she's not really turned on? So if she uses lube all the time, now she's just overriding the voice of the vagina, and that will become manifest as more numbness for her,
mm,
right? She'll be more numb, more disconnected. Now there's more healing to do whenever she gets out of that relationship or figures out what maybe there's all of this unspoken stuff between the couple that if they got it out onto the table, I call it clearing the glass. Right? Imagine
mm,
that there's a clear pane of glass between a couple. You're on one side, your partner's on the other. And the more that you're don't ask, don't tell, sin of omissioning, lying, you build all these splotches of mud on the glass where eventually that can turn into a brick wall. You can't see each other, you can't feel each other, you definitely don't fuck each other. But when you start to
mm,
pull those things down through that process of communication, then you clear that space. And now you
mm,
live it's like relationship feng shui, emotional feng shui. You're clearing away all the debris and the buildup that might be years or
mm,
even decades in the making. So a relationship can be salvaged in that process, but it won't be without it. Right? Throwing
mm,
on lube and taking antidepressants and taking Viagra isn't going to solve the problem.
mm.
It's idiocy.
That's such a fantastic analogy. I think you've figured it out really well. So you spoke then on numbness, and I'm curious to know your perspective on sex toys. I have my different thoughts on them, but I've always thought, and I've heard another sex therapist once say that sex toys can be wonderful, but they can also cause overstimulation and numbness. So, what's your perspective on sex toys?
I think sex toys can be great tools for exploration, especially for people when they're single, to be using those
Mm,
as companions. The only overstimulation you could have is with a vibrator on the clitoris. Using dildos in the vagina or butt plugs is never going to lead to overstimulation. The only thing that
mm,
would is a mechanical toy, right? Your tongue and a
mm.
finger cannot compete with a machine.
So, what are some of your favorite sex toys?
Well, my favorite sex toys would be the couture glass blown dildos that I designed myself that
Mm,
live in my Anami Alchemia online shop. And I created these, I designed them specifically to achieve the deeper vaginal orgasm. So there's a G spot toy and then two cervical orgasm toys, dildos,
mm.
these haute couture dildos that
Love it.
are I love them because I tested them and designed them over and over again. I went to the glass blowing workshop and, like, supervised the making of the actual, um,
That's so fun.
template. Yeah, I was dedicated. I'm like, "These are my
Yeah.
dream cocks, and they're gonna live forever."
Why glass over any other material?
Look, I didn't want plastic, and
Mm,
I the whole using crystals, I just thought, I'd rather not I guess, tap that much crystal out of the earth. Um,
mm,
and then when we use the glass, you can we I have a crystal elixir line, so it's the liquid crystals. And so you can actually put drops of that elixir onto a glass dildo and it will take on the energetic properties of that crystal for a 7-day
wow.
period. So that was a compromise for me. Plus I love the creativity that you can do with glass, with the color
Mm,
and the shape that may be less achievable with a crystal, right? It's most crystals are
mm,
either straight lines or they have a slight curve, where with glass you have a lot more freedom of shape and size.
mm. You also talk a lot about the jade egg. So, why is that so prevalent in what you share and use?
Well, just like any other muscle, the vagina needs strengthening, right? Like we don't
Mm,
I don't know why we don't think about it, but instead, again, we've accepted it as normal that over 50% of
Mm,
women after childbirth have some form of pelvic organ prolapse. 60% of women have urinary incontinence. We somehow think
mm,
that's normal, right? That wearing Depends diapers and being terrified of trampolines is a normal way of life.
mm,
It's not, right? And the only reason that women have these problems is because they don't exercise their vaginas. So the jade egg is an ancient Taoist tool practice. Went viral for this, over 10 years ago when I had a campaign on Instagram that featured photos of me lifting objects with my vagina indigenous to various regions all over the world. So I was lifting glass chandeliers in Venice and green coconuts in Bali, crystals in LA. I lifted a piece of the Berlin Wall at the Berlin Wall in Germany, which I now call the Great Wall of Vagina.
Oh my God.
So
Are you in the Guinness World Records? Surely.
I'm not. I didn't take it that far. There's a woman who's number 1. I'm probably number 2 for strongest vagina in the world. So that no, but fear not, you need not lift coffee tables and chandeliers. That's okay. A couple pounds will do the trick. So
Mm,
it's very, to build muscle, we need resistance and feedback. And so the idea of a
mm,
Kegel where you're just squeezing your vagina at random in the wind isn't effective. And that's why they don't
mm,
work. That's why so many people have these issues. So having an object like the egg in the vagina, it's got a string attached to it. You put weights on the end of it. It's just like, even face yoga or facial exercises to like lift the muscles up in the face, right? We're
mm,
lifting the muscles up in the vagina. And when we do that, we actually create a facelift because we're supporting the pelvic floor. If we have a weak pelvic floor, everything's falling down. All the internal organs are falling down. The face
mm,
is falling down, the breasts fall down. But when we have a strong pelvic floor, everything is supported and it becomes tighter. And that lift
mm,
registers all the way up the body. So, and of course, you get increased sensation in the vagina, more pleasure, you get more
mm,
lubrication. The more circulation you have in those tissues, the oxygenation, the blood flow, the hormone flow, you have
mm,
lubrication. Circulation equals lubrication. You have much more potential for these deeper orgasms. You can reverse urinary incontinence. We've seen women do it within 1 week who've had 20
wow.
years of diaper wearing and urinary incontinence. 1 week of exercise,
Wow.
it's gone. Reversing and preventing pelvic organ prolapse, having an easier childbirth and recovery afterward, increasing your libido, going from being numb to now feeling things in your vagina. Some women
Mm,
aren't that interested in sex because they don't feel anything. And I get it. If you didn't
mm,
feel anything, why bother, right? You're like, oh, just play with
mm.
my clitoris, right? It's fine. So now that you have this really sensation ridden and expressive vagina, you want to have sex because it feels good to have things inside of there.
Mm.
And you can shoot ping pong balls. And you can give your man a hand job with your vagina. So rather than having this kind of flat, passive entity as your vagina, you can now play the flute where you can isolate
Mm.
different areas of your vagina, just like the fingers on your hand. So you can
Wow.
squeeze and pull, and you can bring your man to ejaculation or stop him from ejaculating just with the power of your vaginal muscles alone.
That is amazing. And some great party tricks in there.
Yeah.
Love to rock up to my next party with a few ping pong balls. No, we're not going that far. So let's talk about your salons then and how people can actually harness this sexual energy and start shooting ping pongs out of their vaginas. What are your favorite salons? What are the salons people can look for? I know there is one called Vaginal Kung Fu, which I assume is everything you've just been speaking about. So can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yes, the Vaginal Kung Fu Salon is all about the art and practice of using the jade egg and all things vaginal reconnaissance, right? The other themes that we've been talking about self knowledge, getting to know your own body, and how to harness that energy as a creative power. My couple
Mm.
salon is called Coming Together, and that's actually starting in early May. And like it sounds, that's my salon for couples. So we go through all of this techniques to learn how to communicate in ways that are collaborative, I guess, instead of combative, and then create this whole gourmet sex connection and use the power of that energy as a creative source to heal each other. And even I have a prescription guide for sexual positions that will help heal different ailments in your body.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Go into tantric techniques, feminine and masculine polarity, all the different orgasmopedia selections I talked about earlier. And then I have a salon called The Well Fucked Woman, and that goes into more of the woman in the relationship, getting to know her own, all these different orgasms, using your feminine energy as a power source. I have one called Sexual Mastery for Men, which is the men's equivalent of all the things I talked about for the women, how to become a super cock, get that incredible stamina that I talked about, learn to separate orgasm from ejaculation, and how to grow your cock. You can actually grow your cock in length and girth and strength.
Wow, that'll be enticing for a few listeners, I'm sure.
Yes, and how to really embody your masculine energy. I'm a big proponent
Mm,
for the return of the alpha male, and that
mm,
salon is all about tapping into that person. And then I
mm,
have a Sexy Mama salon, which is about holistic pregnancy and orgasmic ecstatic birth, because that, in a way, is where a lot of these things all start, right? Where the way that we birth and the trauma that women can sustain by having traumatic births and
mm,
difficult hospital crisis created births versus having orgasmic births that really imprint upon them, their partner, and their child the capacity for pleasure and self-knowledge that is robbed by, for so many women by having these experiences that are less than ideal. So,
I actually partook in the Sexy Mama Salon when I was pregnant.
oh,
Unfortunately, towards the end of my pregnancy, I wish I had started it earlier. But I was so blown away at like the quality of the content in there and all the different facets that you cover and how you start all the way back before conception and how every part of the journey is so important. You even go back into history and how that plays a part into where we are today. But again, bringing through so much of that like empowerment into the woman and how we have control over our birth experience and our pregnancy experience and how much can be harnessed throughout that time. And I just found the course like really quite profound. Definitely going to do it again before baby number two. But I mean, I would love to do a whole nother episode just on that alone. Even when you say orgasmic births, I'm sure people are probably like, sorry, what are you talking about? Like, is that actually a thing? But it so is. There are women who are having pleasurable birth experiences.
that's the one orgasm I forgot to mention, birth orgasms.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I think we should definitely touch on. So honestly, I couldn't recommend it any more highly. But for your course coming up in April, we have got a link in the show notes for anyone that wants to participate. And that's one that you're actually going to be running live. So I assume people could get weekly calls with you. And what else can they expect?
Yeah, the Coming Together Salon is 10 weeks, and every week you get a series of videos and all educational, informational, along with home play exercises for you to do. And then we follow up a few days later with a live Q&A call with me. You can ask me anything to help you along your journey. We have all of that housed in a private members area on my website. And then you're part of this whole community that you can choose to engage with or not, but they're there and you're part of this cohort of other people who are looking, going through the same kinds of things. And so I think
Mm,
one of the things we hear the most is not only did people love the material, but they loved the experience of getting to hear other people's other people going through the same thing, knowing that they weren't
mm,
alone, getting to know and connect with other people and feeling that level of camaraderie, right? Because so many
mm,
people go through these things in isolation and they are afraid to speak really openly about them to their friends and even their partners, right? And so this creates
mm,
that removal of the taboo and actually makes it fun to be going through these
mm.
experiences together.
Well, very exciting. So I'll definitely add that link in and it'll also be across socials for anyone who wants to have a look. Now, before we wrap up, I do love to end my episodes by asking our guests to leave a little entry in the Test Talks diary. So this is just one lasting quote or piece of advice or wisdom that you would like to share with the listeners.
If you aren't scared shitless, you aren't aiming high enough.
Love it. Bang. There we go. Thank you so much for such a wonderful chat. I feel very inspired and excited and ready to do your next course. So
Can I leave a second one?
you definitely can.
Okay.
You can leave 3 if you want.
All right, this one because it's more relevant to the topic at hand.
Yeah.
If you're having sex and you don't feel energized, rejuvenated, enlightened, self-actualized, deeply ecstatic, and like it changed your life, you're doing it wrong, and there's a better way to do it.
Love it. We all want that. We all want your way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tess, for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. If you loved the episode, please subscribe, rate, and review. It honestly means so much and helps to keep these conversations going. And I'd love to connect with you. You can message me on Instagram or TikTok, and I've left all the details from the episode in the show notes below. I'll see you next week.